Come closer. Let me tell you something that will shock your life. The images on your screen are the consequences of a failed society. Now, did you know that Nigerian families are selling their children just to make ends meet? Before you pass judgment or before you throw insults at me, I think it's best for us to explore the story a little bit deeper. So stay with me. We'll be right back. Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Moitinya and I'm a visual storyteller who happens to be visually impaired. I love covering African stories, particularly the one that we're about to cover today. But if you've been following me for quite a while, you will know that I am particularly interested in stories that I'm connected with. So thank you for joining me and subscribe if you have not. Let's jump right into the story. So before I began this story, it's a heavy one for me. I was very ashamed, I should say. Particularly because it's almost as if you're exposing the truth about the realities of some families in Nigeria, right? And so the people that actually made me think deeply about this story, first off, or that made me feel guilty, I'm about to give you their names, was Chimamanda Adichie. Years ago, I came across her TED Talk called The Danger of a Single Story, right? Where she said, relying only on one narrative about a person, culture, or group of people can lead to harmful stereotypes, right? That's one. The second person that kept me on my toes when it comes to sharing you this story, right, was Litan Yongo, the Oscar-winning actress. She has a podcast called Mind Your Own, right? In this podcast, she brings together Africans from different parts of the world to tell their stories. So everyday people telling extraordinary stories. And she did a featured article on BBC in which she said that she's refusing to cover stories about conflict, poverty, and diseases, right? With regards to Africa, because she said that's what they know us as, and she doesn't want to continue that narrative. Now, we all know that there's a global narrative surrounding Africa being a disease-infested continent. The thing is, these are the type of stories I am heavily connected with because they reflect my own reality at some point in my life. So I am choosing to bring a global attention to local stories, particularly this one. So let's jump right into it. So in May of 2024, I returned back to Nigeria for the first time in 22 years. And we stayed in Edo State, particularly Benin City, where my family is from. And so in Benin, I went to New Benin Market, to get to see how things are in Nigeria, or particularly in Benin. And so the first time I went to this market, I didn't notice anything because obviously I was anxious. The second time, I began paying attention and I began to look at shops, like different shops. And in these shops, they had young children. So just like the images you're seeing on your screen. And these children are mainly girls. Now, it's either they are sleeping, right, in these shops, or they are attending to customers, or they're just staring. And so it bothered me a lot that I began to investigate as a journalist, right, or storyteller, or as they say in Nigeria, amiibo. So through my investigations with the women in the market, I learned that these children came from different parts of Nigeria and they were sold by their family to well-to-do families, right? And parents are doing this because they're trying to make ends meet. This is a very hard story for me to talk about, so I'm trying to not break down because it was a difficult one for me. And the girls are as young as 5. The most I saw was around 13. So they're not developed yet. They have flat chest. They look extremely young to me. Now, as of the time that these girls were in these different shops, helping their madam, I'll call them madam, out, it was school hour, right? Kids are supposed to be in school around this time, but these girls are at work. And I think that bothered me and it shook me to my core. So when I returned back to the US, I began to research to see if this type of story has been covered by mainstream media. I started with the New York Times. I researched there, couldn't find much. But then I came across other stories that were quite shocking, such as the rise of baby factories in Nigeria, where girls are taken off the street or kidnapped, placed in a room, repeatedly essayed by men. And when these girls have their babies, the babies are sold to families who can't have children or women who can't have children. Then recently, I saw another article of the governor in Kano State, which is the northern parts of Nigeria. What they're starting to do now, because there's a high rate of divorce in Nigeria, and also due to the economic situation, there are more kids on the streets. So what this governor is doing is taking these children and putting them in camps and making sure that they are well taken care of, or rather being attended to. So far, they have rescued 300 boys. So now we're seeing some rescues when it comes to boys, but what's going on with the girls? So the amount that is being paid for those girls are probably under $100. And it's either they are paid or, for example, the family of those girls are paid a fixed amount. Let's say $50,000, you can have my child. Or the families of these girls are being paid monthly, almost as if the child is being leased to a well-to-do family, right? So every month, these young girls' family gets the money they need to survive, right? Now, I couldn't help but relate this particular scenario to the transatlantic slave trade. I know that these girls are they're not being sold outside of Nigeria, they're being sold within Nigeria. But you know, slavery happened within us before we began to sell ourselves, right? Out to white people, basically. And the women corrected me. They said these girls can grow up someday to become entrepreneurs. They said these girls are helping their families. They said these girls are taken care of, and if they are placed in a good home, they're more likely to go to school. But this particular notion was disturbing to me on every level. Now, when I began to look at Nigeria's economy, that was where I placed all the blame. And if you've been following stories about Nigeria so far, you would see that there have been a series of protests happening in the country. For example, last year there was a 10-day protest where Nigerians came, or rather they took to the streets to speak against bad governance and bring an end to hunger, right? We're still waiting for the results of that protest because nothing has been done yet. As of last year, the poverty rate in Nigeria was about 40.7%. So that's almost half of the population is living below the poverty line. So looking at these statistics and looking at the situation of the country, it is clear why parents are choosing to take this route, such as selling their children just to make ends meet. It is difficult for me to judge a parent for doing this. And as I began this episode, I was sharing with you how it is quite similar to my life, and that's why I choose to tell these stories. When my father left to the US, my mom was responsible for 5 children under 10. And I remember when she would go to the market, right? We didn't have any food to eat at the time, and she would sell her own wrapper. She would sell my father's clothes that he left, just so we can have something to eat. So I remember those days, and there's some food to this day that I wouldn't eat simply because it was what we ate a lot of at that time. Thankfully, though, my mother was able to get assistance, and she opened her own restaurant, and we're able to live better than the average life of someone living in Nigeria. So these family may have sold all their clothes. They may have gone to church and prayed, but the condition or their condition remains the same. And the only option, in my opinion, based on my observation, is to let go of your daughter just to be able to care for the rest of the family. I don't believe children are responsible in terms of taking care of their parents. I think a parent is somebody responsible for the life of a child. But in a society, or when a society has failed everyone, including children, that's when you find situations that we see today in Nigeria. This is an untold story. It has not been covered yet. My goal is to dive deeper into this story and bring attention to what's currently happening in Benin City, Edo State, Nigeria. And what I would like you guys to do in helping me on this journey, going back and covering this on a deeper level, possibly having a short documentary series on the subject, right? If you're looking to support me, I'll put all the information on that, on how you can support me financially during my return to Nigeria sometime this year or possibly early next year. And I'm also going to be reaching out to reputable news organizations to see ways I can get grants to dive deeper into the story and possibly saving girls. Because I believe that the life of a girl is so valuable to the entire family. When a woman is taken care of, when a woman is educated, she's more likely to take care of her entire family. And the fact that these girls are not in school, chances are things will be difficult for them in the future. We can all do our parts to save these girls. I do want to thank you all for listening to me and watching this video. I know this was a difficult one for me. I've been taking in and out breath just to be able to hold myself together. But these are the reasons why I choose to tell stories, to bring global attention to local stories. Thank you for watching this video, and be sure to subscribe, click on the notification bell to be the first to receive any new content. And thank you for supporting me as always. I'll speak with you on the next episode.